Welcome back to Book Buddies, where today we are going to be ranking all 6 of Jane Austen's main novels. I've read all of these throughout the last couple of years, and I've had quite fun with them. I've enjoyed some of them more than others, but I think all these are good books. And I just want to say, like with any ranking, there's no definitive answer, so my favorite's probably not going to be your favorite, although I might, who knows. And if my favorite isn't your favorite, that's okay. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. So coming in at number 6 is Mansfield Park. Now, like I said earlier, this is not a bad book. I just didn't connect with it as much. I thought Fanny was a charming and likable protagonist. I liked how she was a little bit more soft-spoken and quiet, especially since a lot of Jane Austen's other leading ladies are a little bit more feisty, outspoken, so it was nice to have a little bit of someone who was a little bit more reserved. However, I feel like this was her most kind of forgettable novel. It's a little hard for me to remember all that happened in it, and I think a lot of us who have read it agree that this might be the weakest love story. Edmund was his name, right? And wasn't he her cousin? Yeah, I didn't dislike this book. It just didn't leave as much of a lasting impact on me compared to some of her other novels. So that's why it's number 6 on this list. But please think of it as number 6 and not last place. So next might be a somewhat controversial pick, but I have Sense and Sensibility. Now, admittedly, I was kind of debating between this one and Mansfield Park as my 6th place, but then I decided to put this one a little higher because I did remember it a little bit more. I like how we have sisters as the protagonists. Now, in almost all of Jane Austen's novels, the main character does have a sister, but here the two sisters are closer to equals rather than compared to something like Pride and Prejudice, where you have very clearly the main sister and then her secondary sister is very much more in the supporting category. While I would say Marianne and Eleanor felt more like equals. I would say I don't like how they make a big deal out of the age gap between some of the characters, because it made me feel a little squicky. I know that this was written 200 years ago and times were different, but when they make a big deal of it, it's hard for me to ignore it. But I think it is really cool how this was Jane Austen's first novel, and it still has and you can kind of see how it led into some of her other works. Also, I confess, maybe when I was reading this, I just wasn't in a great headspace. Maybe I was busy. I think if I reread it today, I would enjoy it more than when I initially read it. Coming at number 4, I have Northanger Abbey. I did a review about this book last month, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts about this, you can check that one out. But I like how it's very different from a lot of Jane Austen's other works. Specifically, it's more gothic, satirical, rather than a romance. I mean, all of Jane Austen's novels are satires in a way, specifically kind of poking fun at ideals of that time, but I think this one is the most satirical, and I really like how our main character has this overactive imagination, and her love interest and the banter in between them is really fun. He's a lot more carefree compared to the other Austen heroes, so he stood out to me. However, the reason this one isn't as high for me, I feel like similar to the last two, it didn't affect me as well. I had a great time, but I did miss a little bit of the yearning and the deep character work that my favorite Jane Austen novels have. So my top 3, I made an episode a couple months ago where I was talking about some of my favorite classics. All 3 of these books were in it, so you feel free to check that one out. But without further ado, my 3rd favorite Jane Austen novel is Persuasion. So this one, what makes it stand out is our protagonist Anne is nearing spinsterhood. She's she was in love when she was younger, but then her family told her, well, persuaded her to not choose him because they were not in a good, her family didn't see him as worthy of her. Then years later, she's, nearing about 27, she's a spinster, and she feels as though she has lost her bloom. She's no longer special or valuable. But then when her love interest comes back, he is quite successful, and this is probably Jane Austen's most reflective novel. It is her final novel to be released. It was released posthumously along with Northanger Abbey, so when you think about like that, it definitely hits a little bit more. I think this one also does kind of like the slow burn yearning a little bit. I remember specifically near the end, she's reading a letter, and I was deeply moved by it, so that moment's definitely stayed with me the past couple of years. And I would say this is probably Jane Austen's most underrated novel, and I would definitely recommend it if you want something a little bit more of a slow burn. And similar with Mansfield Park, our main character, Anne, is a little bit more quiet, reserved. She's not the spunky, fiery protagonist that you see in my favorite Jane Austen novels, but I think that's what makes her special, especially when you add in her circumstances. My second favorite Jane Austen novel, I would have to pick Emma. So Emma is a more unconventionally likable protagonist. I think at the start she is very much flawed. I kind of say she's sort of like Darcy and Lizzie's daughter a little bit, where she's spunky, she's outspoken, she likes to have fun, she's pairing up her friends, but she has no intentions to marry, and she's a bit prideful, especially because she is well off, and that's one of the reasons she believes she can get away with not getting married. I mean, I think there's a part when she says that, like, my sister's married, she has kids, so I'm good, which I'm not really interested in getting married anytime soon, so I can kind of relate to it, especially, like, I have cousins who are married and have kids, so I'm like, I'm good. And this one was actually the inspiration for Clueless, and I read it after watching Clueless, and I was aware of that. It was really fun kind of seeing, like, all the little details where even though they're very different stories technically, this is a 1810s period piece in England, while Clueless is a 90s film set in America, but you can see like how Cher and Emma are similar and how these characters are similar, or how this plot point kind of reminisces on this one. And I like how this one has a very noble kind of challengers to lovers. Specifically, I think Knightley kind of challenges Emma a little bit more with how she sees the world, and she thinks she has everything settled. Well, she knows what she wants, but then she starts kind of thinking a little bit more about how other people have affected her and what she believed and she didn't believe. And I think her character growth throughout this is really, really fun and really beautiful. So my favorite Jane Austen novel, call me basic, but I don't care because I love this book, is Pride and Prejudice. Our main character, Elizabeth, she is spunky, she is witty, she thinks she knows what she wants and how everything is, but then she starts learning more things, and specifically about the people around her, and she realizes that perhaps there is more to it than meets the eye. And then similarly, you have Mr. Darcy. He's also kind of thinks that he has things figured out, and sure enough, he's also wrong, and they both must overcome their pride and their prejudice in order to realize the truth about each other and why they are meant to be. I revisited this book a lot during college. I read it for fun in my freshman year, and then in my sophomore year, I got to read it again for my British literature class. We had a lot of great discussions about it, kind of talking about how the satire works and how this fits into being like a little bit more of like a literary fiction / satire of the 1810s, and we get and seeing how it's still beloved and effective today, and like, what does this have to say about this? Is it saying this? I even wrote a paper talking about how, using the Marxist theory, kind of talking about the class, and what does Jane Austen say about these types of classes or professions through her novel. It's just a really beautiful, timeless story that I will continue to revisit in many forms throughout the years. So those are my rankings of Jane Austen's novels. In case you're wondering about these editions, these are the Penguin cloth-bound edition, classic edition. So I will try and leave a link to them if you're interested in purchasing them yourself. And once again, all of this was just my opinion, and your list might be quite different from mine, but that's okay. I feel like if we all liked the same things equally and disliked the same things equally, this world would be very boring when it comes to art. But once again, if you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends. I'm Louisa Hammond, and I'll see you next time.